All right, so hi everyone. I'm just staying here for a short while.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Hi, Bob.
Literally, good
Nice
morning.
to see you all. So Bob is from Canada, if the audience doesn't know. We are all here for you. I will be in the background, but I wanted to introduce you the experts. So you have Paloma here, Cheryl, Joy, Bob, and Elmarie, and they are part of the discussion about the work-life balance. And we also have Paloma, but Paloma is also here. All right, I'm a little bit tired already. So I will be in the background and you enjoy this beautiful conversation. Cheryl will be your moderator, and let's do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. How are
Hi, Cheryl.
beautiful ladies and handsome gents? Wow, we have quite an interesting panel today, don't we? So I'm excited to have you guys, and welcome to the great audience we have out there watching us. We are so empowered just knowing that you guys are watching us, and there is I feel a lot of power and energy in the room, and that's amazing. So today our panel is about work-life balance. So we're going to discuss that today, and we're going to look at what's happening now with this whole COVID situation, right? So we've been experiencing this COVID situation from late December all around the world. None of us have been able to escape from what's been happening, and it's impacted how we work, how we live, how our relationships are, basically every touch points of our life, right? So today we're going to look deeper into that, and we're going to start off with a little bit of an introduction from our panelists. So we're going to keep it short because we have very limited time and we have quite a number of panels which will probably be joining us slowly, right? So maybe we'll get our handsome gents, right, to start off this session, because they really they're our pillars, right? So let's get maybe Joy can start off first, just a short introduction and tell us, in a sentence, who is Joy?
Thank you, Cheryl. It's a pleasure to be here. And hi, Bob. Pleasure meeting you, Paloma, Elmarie. I make your brands have relationships. That's what I do. Those relationships make your business earn revenues. I'm Joy Abdullah, a strategic marketing specialist. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel, Cheryl, and other panelists. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, go ahead, Elmarie.
Yes, I'm Elmarie. I'm South African. I live in Malaysia. I've been here for the past 10 years, and they call me the optimist. So I work in transforming education systems, transforming learning, and I work across the world with many different countries and many different people. So I'm so happy to be here today.
Super excited to have you here, Elmarie, because as an educator, I can feel that energy to empower, and it's an exciting time for education, especially, right? So we'll talk about that as we're going on. Maybe we can have Bob. Want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody from Canada. I'm Bob Hooey, sometimes called the Idea Man, sometimes called other things. Who knows? Depends on the time of day and who's talking. I tend to work with innovative leaders and businesses that want to grow profitably. So I'll be coming at it from that perspective. But I also understand that a lot of what we're doing relates to people in business. And obviously that's been my business as well. So I'm looking forward to sharing some ideas with you this morning.
And we have the beautiful Paloma. Do you want to give us a bit of an intro?
Hi, everyone. I teach women and underrepresented groups how to be shameless because we are fed up with being shamed and ashamed of how we look and wear and behave. You can ask me about that later. I'm also an award-winning photographer, communication specialist. I've been in Malaysia for 15 years, so I do know how to use the law properly. Okay lah.
That's always a plus point. Isn't it, Joy? You've been here a while as well, and Elmarie.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
All right. So that's great. We have a bit of an introduction from our panelists. And I just want to set the scene to what's going to happen today. I want everyone to take off your shoes, relax. It's going to be a very relaxed conversation. If you have your coffee, please feel free to have your coffee. Audiences, get your coffee ready, your water, and we're going to have a very relaxed discussion. And we're going to look at the impact of work-life balance and what it has kind of done to us. Is there such a thing? And we're going to go into a different core areas. We're going to look at the concept of balance. We're going to look at some of the challenges and struggles, with working from home. What is that balance with life, family? And finally, we're going to look at strategies, right? What is strategies for better balance, maybe integration? And we're going to sum it up, and we're going to get this amazing views from all our panels here today. And we all come from very different backgrounds, and some of you have lived all around the world. So it gives you a very nice perspective of what and how you look at things as well. All right? Okay, so let's start off with something very simple, right? What does work-life balance mean to you? I mean, is there such a thing? Bob,
Okay. I can go first if you want. Actually, I think for me, it's the elusive dream. And I say that because I sometimes am my own worst enemy in terms of taking on more projects or creating more projects than I have time for. But that's me. That's my drive, is that I want to be working on something. And I usually have 2 or 3 things on the go at one time. Like, for example, right now, while we're doing all of this, I'm working on a book on how to present effectively online, because that's what we're learning, how to live and work in this little rectangle. But work-life balance is really just a matter of being accountable to yourself and understanding where your energies are, where your interests are, and how you balance those so that you still have both of them working.
Oh my, sorry about that. So how to balance it out so we have both things working, right? What do you think, Elmarie, about that? How do you look at it?
I think if you really enjoy what you are doing and you find that you're working in your passion and you're working towards the things that really means a lot to you, then, work is life and is joy. And I don't think there's a recipe. I don't think there's a ratio. I think it depends on where you are in your life's journey, whether you are, a young housewife or a mother with children, or you are, by yourself and work gives you joy. But as I agree, you have to be accountable to yourself, and you have to reflect on, are you bringing and creating joy in your life and joy in the lives of others? And that, to me, is work-life balance.
That's great, right? Because there's no one size fits all if you really think about it, right? There's no manual saying, okay, work-life balance means you must have 20% of this and 50% of that or anything like that. It's just, sometimes you just got to wing it. And like you said, right? It's all about joy. What brings you joy? So since we're talking about joy, Joy, what do you think? We can't hear you, Joy.
You hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, something seemed to be I should have moved my mouse out. My apologies for that. I'm saying Bob said it very nicely, and Elmarie sort of capped it. It's individual's perspective or a definition of work. So many of us would probably say we are conditioned into understanding work is a job out of university or pre-university, which runs 9 to 5. And for that time that you spend doing that work, you get paid. So if you have that perspective, then as Elmarie was saying, many of us don't have joy. I mean, there is data out there that says X percentage, 70, 80% of the people are not engaged. They're just going through for the paycheck. So first point is the perspective one has. The second is, to echo Elmarie, is do you really like what you're doing? I mean, we all go through tertiary education, and sometimes our tertiary education is not what our career is. Case in point, I'm a finance postgraduate, and I've spent my entire career in marketing and advertising. Go figure, 32 years plus, So when you like doing something, you automatically find a passion. When you're passionate about something, you love it. We all know what love stands for, in different ways. So balance. If your perspective of work is a chore, you're going to hate it. And the more you hate it, the more you create resistance. The more you create resistance, you know where that's going. But if you actually love what you're doing, the question becomes, like Bob said, I tend to be on his side. I also tend to chew off a lot more because I love doing that. That's my comfort zone. Being in projects, being with clients, grooming the teams, doing their marketing campaigns. It tickles me. It tickles me to say, all right, how can this product, how can this brand actually have a relationship? What's the content? And then all of a sudden you realize we spent 10 hours behind it. And you've got a family, you've got a wife, you've got kids, you've got, others who require a certain amount of presence. And that's where probably we'll cover it later. Boundaries become very important. So definition of work from your perspective, what do you really love doing? Understanding that very clearly, and then setting some key boundaries between those two to understand that you're giving your whole self at that time, be it 90 minutes, be it 8 hours, but it's your whole self. It's not a fragmented, multitasking individual who's there. That's my perspective.
Thank you, Joy. That is very interesting. I like how you captured both Bob's and Elmarie's points. So I'm very excited to hear what Paloma has to say about this.
Yes, so Joy gave a brief definition of what work is. You do a job and you get paid for it. What I want to ask is, what about all these people who are doing unpaid care and domestic work? Is that not work?
Yep.
Because it takes time and effort and energy. So let me tell you something interesting that I found out from the International Labor Organization. It's about Asia specifically. Hey, Asia. So in Asia, women do 4 times more unpaid care work than men. And how does that impact them? There are about 606 million women who are not able to fully do their job or get a job because they have to do the unpaid work. Another interesting fact that I learned, don't come after me, this is ILO figures, it's not just me saying it. Globally, across the globe, women perform 76% of the total unpaid work. That's 3 times more than men. And in Asia specifically, it's 80% more. So if we keep going in this direction, it's going to take us 210 years to close the gap, the gender gap in unpaid care work, which we also call domestic work. So what is the strategy for that? I put it to the panel. Can you tell us what do you think should be done?
Very interesting, right?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point that you raise in terms of what do we define as work. And, I always get upset when women say, I'm just a housewife. Who decided that being a housewife is not a worthy occupation or a worthy contribution that you are making. But I think that takes us a little bit away from what we are looking at the moment, and that is, how do you find that balance in your life? And can you only find meaning in things that you get paid for? That's an interesting point. But I think it is about reflection, and it's about, Martin Seligman says when you think about positive psychology, that the greatest joy comes from when you work in service of others and you work towards achieving a higher goal. Now, if you are trapped in the circumstance, Paloma, I mean, and you are you find that you have to do all this domestic work or care work of others, it becomes really complicated. Is there a way that you can, within that circumstance, still find joy? Is this exclusive of joy? That's a good question.
Definitely, right? So when we think about work, right, then we have to go back to see how people view what work is. I mean, for me personally, right, to sit, I mean, now during COVID, right, I'm not just an educator anymore. I'm also a mother, I'm also a housewife. We are many different roles. And does work mean something that we need to be paid for, right? There are a lot of work, I'm sure, impact projects that you guys do on a pro bono basis that is also work, right? So I guess it also depends on how we define what work is. Personally, I feel a housewife's job, I mean, I heads out to them, and how do they do it? It's like you work all the time. There's no such thing as taking a medical certificate, an MC, we call it in Malaysia, right? MC. There's no such thing as an off day, for example, right? So again, it goes back to us talking about work. What is work? But also, what is balance? Everyone looks at balance very differently. So what do you guys think about that? Work, balance? How do we define these two things, right?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I think in some ways we're using that term, and it really is an elusive thing, because you're never really fully in balance. What I talk about when I talk about time management is flexibility, building in flexibility, so that you choose where you want to put your time when you have to. And there are times when the work has to be about the work. Like, say you have a business, or say you're doing something and you have a project that's due, then you stay up later and work on it because it gets done. Or you're at college, or you're going to school and you have a project that needs to be done. You stay up late. When I was studying architecture, there was times I would stay up all night drawing to get drawings done, to be able to put them in, to be judged. And that wasn't in balance. It was just the reality of what I had to do. But going back to what was said in terms of, and again, I think we do our ladies a disservice when we still use the term housewife. There's part of me that I mean, I know that's a term, but in essence, you think about it. If you're the wife and you choose to stay home, you're able to stay home. I grew up in a time period where my mom, until my sister and I were in school, stayed home. Then she went back to teaching. Was her time more important when she was a teacher, or was her time more important when she was taking care of my sister and myself, and making sure that we had what we needed and we were nurtured, we were loved? That probably set us up to succeed in our lives as much as anything. Although as a teacher, she impacted a lot of lives. So that, again, that's the balance in how you look at it. I think part of what it is we, as a cultural thing, is looking at bringing value wherever we are, whether we're out in the workforce, or we're staying at home taking care of kids, or we're staying at home taking care of an invalid parent. I've done that, those kinds of things. I think too often we try and box people, and instead of saying, wherever you are, find some joy, find some satisfaction in it, even ever so little. And if you don't like it, keep working to work out of it, because I don't think we have to accept anything that we're stuck in. I see too many people staying stuck when they could choose to make a 1 degree change that eventually gets them someplace else.
That's so great. And I think I really love that term that you used earlier when you said you're accountable to yourself. Because I always think that you can always find more time if you're really reflective and you think about what you really spend your time on and how you could actually create time in your day. And I once read this amazing this metaphor. If you think of your life as a bank account and minutes is money, and you think, well, you can't replenish this. So what do you spend time on? And we have so much time wasters, Facebook or not working in a smart or organized way. So I think we so often are caught up in the complaint cycle, or you always would say, oh, I don't have time. But I think it's very much a decision that you have to make to empower yourself and to find that meaning in your day. It doesn't matter what you do. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Yeah, and I agreed. I mean, I'm going to jump in here, Elmarie. You've actually taken a point away, but spot on.
Sorry.
What you choose to put your time on is literally what is going to get done, and it becomes, whether you call it work or you call it an activity, it's a definition, and that definition is your own perception of what you're doing. Number one. Number two, I think you and Bob highlighted a couple of things given Paloma's data, and the data is amazing. I mean, Paloma, thank you for sharing that. We have self-perceptions that has been created through the conditioning, how we grow up. So this term housewife. My wife is today a housewife. She's been a housewife for the last 9.5 years. She was a career woman. And I don't know how to thank her, though I thank her every day. She willingly gave up a career for what was originally 5 to 6 years for our 2 kids. And now she's a returning mom back into a career looking for a job. That's a separate story, but that's work. And Cheryl is right. Mothers or women, really caregivers doing something. I mean, I'm a father. I can do a lot of stuff, but I know what my gaps are where my kids are concerned. Okay. I mean, I do sit with my kids and help them out and their homework and stuff like that. I send them to school. I bring them back. Do I take that as work? Do I take that as life? To me, I take it as life. I enjoy doing that because that's my me time with my boys. That 30-minute drive is my time. Pick them up. How's the day been? So the definition of work is something that is very, very critical. Then the time you choose to put into that work brings you that balance. I think we had a comment on the feed right now. Somebody said, as long as one thing doesn't overlap into another, right? That's balancing it out. That's balancing it out. And then, of course, if you love what you're doing and you make more of it, maybe, I mean, today I'm happy that I've got something which is purposeful, which is work, and which is life. And I've been working from home for 3 years before, 2 years before COVID hit. So am I working? Am I living? I mean, it's life. I'm living. I do certain things at certain points in time, stay up the nights and do project work. Is it balanced? In my opinion, yes. Am I going to look for anybody else's opinion? Just my immediate family, maybe. That's it. So if you're happy, you feel joy in what you're doing, and you feel, hey, you're not overwhelmed, you're not stressed out, you don't have anxiety, good to go, boom. Go for it. Do it. Because each one of us will have our own little sort of methodology and fix. All our lives are unique.
Exactly.
That's very interesting perspectives to look at, right? At the end of the day, it really goes back to our perception, how we look at work and how we look at life. So we heard very interesting ideas, right? They talk about flexibility, accountability, productivity, how every minute is money, and it really looks at how we see the entire big picture. And I just want to just a little shout out to all our audiences watching. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot of interesting comments are coming in. Joy pointed out some of them, and Katie Kana says, we are given 24 hours, right? How do we use it, right? Do we invest in it, and we invest in what kind of activities as well? So when we think about work-life balance, right? That's one thing that I want to bring up, right? So there is this saying by Jerry Keller. He says, work is a rubber ball. Rubber ball, yeah. If you drop it, bounces back. Other four balls are family, health, friends, integrity. All those, they are made of glass and they can shatter. What do you guys think about that? Can we have maybe Elmarie? Have you ever thought of that in that way?
For me, I think about it so differently. I don't think about all these things as different balls or different aspects of my life, but maybe that's just how I grew up and how I view life. And I want to take it back to the fact that I think I'm a better mother because I am also growing my own, I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly contributing. And that makes me, I think, a better mother because I think I'm a better model for my kids. But what works for me might not work and in another circumstance, So I just think the key here is mindfulness. I think we have to be, if you develop and inculcate a mindfulness or be more mindful. A friend of mine recently, Helen, she mentioned, when she's got this habit, whenever she walks through a door, she just takes a minute and just grounds herself to say, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What am I doing? If you just are more and more mindful of what you do, I don't think these different balls or these different, it shouldn't be, if you think about that, it's very stressful, right? What am I going to drop? What's going to shatter? What's going to break? Then I don't know. Then I think you need to reevaluate your life. That's my personal opinion.
And very often, I think sometimes we overload ourselves. I know I do that, and I see that with my wife, and I try and encourage her when I can. My wife is an amazing lady. She's in the hospital right now, but normally she would be here helping with some of the techie problems with the sound and stuff. Because she's the techie in the family. I'm the talkie in the family, and it's a nice partnership.
That's a good one.
And it's really true. It really is a partnership. I mean, I was actually interviewed once, and somebody said, "Do you have a favorite app?" And I said, "Yes, her name is Irene." And I came home and told her, because if something doesn't work, she says, "Get out of the way," and she sits down and fixes it. But I've been noticing her as she retired from her work. She was a research scientist for about 35 years, and she started really young. She still is pretty young. And then when we met, she was doing web design, and she started doing my web design. And then she's eventually moved into helping with all the books that I've written in terms of publishing and things like that. And now doing that for other speakers and authors. But I'm watching her balancing her time and still having time for fun. Like, for example, just in the last 3 weeks, she's starting to take an online painting course. And she is having so much fun with this. She's gone out. I went out and bought her an easel, and she's got all this stuff. And she goes down, and she said, "Where did the time go?" All of a sudden, I was tired, and the next thing I knew, it was like 7:30, and I was painting this thing. And so I think some of that is the lesson is, if you're going through your day, occasionally take many breaks to do something that really does empower you. Because I know, like for me, again, there's the concept of introvert, extrovert. I'm the extrovert in our family, which is pretty obvious. And with COVID, I became the person who stayed home, to the point where she was saying, "Don't you have someplace to go?" Because I was under her foot all the time. And the truth is, I couldn't go anywhere. I mean, I was excited the one time we got to drive into the big city and buy some bags of dirt for some planters that we were doing. That was the big event. We're going and doing a drive-through dinner at A&W because everything was closed. But so again, you learn to adjust, and you learn to look at it and say, okay, what can I get out of this? What can I put into this that brings something for me, so that, instead of just going, "Oh, me, it's horrible, I don't like it," there's always something good in every situation. Even if it's an impossible situation, there's always something good. And that's when I try and teach myself, is look for that, even if it's just a little piece of goodness. And if not, maybe you can be it.
Neuroscience, that is flow. Flow is that ultimate state when you have that the brain waves where you're busy doing things and time just falls away and disappears. And I think that is the litmus test for whether you're doing things that are really meaningful. That's a good description.
What do you think, Paloma? Because we were talking about, over delivery sometimes, and there's a huge change of roles, right? Bob was talking about how, he's an extrovert, he's always the one going out, and then now he's always at home. And, I've noticed that a lot of people who are extroverts, myself included, now I'm like, do I have to go out? So how do you think we are moving into the next segment, right? Talking about the challenges and struggles. So now we're at a point of time, we've had time to adapt, right? But in the beginning, how was it? What are the challenges and what are the struggles, right? I'm sure a lot of you grapple with that whole multiple roles and, maybe a bit of over delivery when you first started. I remember when I first started, I never left my room until 7, 8 at night, until my husband was like, you better go back to work. What's the difference, whether you're at home or not? So how did you, Paloma, how did you deal with these challenges and struggles when the COVID first started, working from home?
For me, it was learning to establish healthy boundaries. I had to do self-care and recognize that I'm exhausted. And although I want to be the best agent I can be, by the way, I'm working at the World Health Organization. So what I do directly impacts the health of people worldwide. So I have some guilt about switching off. But I got over it because if I'm not well, how do I do a good job? So I had to put boundaries. When my shift is over, it's over. Unless there's a really big crisis that I have to jump into, of course I'll do it. But if it's minor things, it can wait until tomorrow. And some people see it as being selfish because we are in a pandemic and it's all hands on. But I see it as self-care.
I don't know what the rest of the panel feels, but the one thing that I found as a result of COVID is that with the overwhelming number of webinars and Zoom meetings, and I think people forget those boundaries, because in the past you wouldn't be scheduling, I get invitations for meetings 3 o'clock in the morning. People tend to forget that you live in different time zones, or it's just so easy to schedule the meeting and invite people. But, that I find is quite an invasion. Sometimes I just don't want to even switch on my computer because you just have enough of it, So that to me is one real big change that I can say that how COVID has impacted on my life.
Yeah.
I would add there's another thing that prevents a healthy work-life balance, which is some anxiety regarding job security. I do have some friends who have expressed that, what if I don't over-deliver and then my contract doesn't get renewed? So there is no balance unless the environment encourages it.
I think that's a great point, right?
Yeah.
Everyone there are some people who feel that, I need to always be on my PC and, make sure I'm working, and you're afraid, like, if I move away from my PC, am I really working or not? If you go out and daughter screams and you go and check on her, am I really working or not? It's between my hours. And I think that's a really great point, right? Am I doing this because I'm afraid of what's going to happen to my job? And I think a lot of people went through that as well.
For me, I established one very simple rule is I do not bring my laptop into my bedroom.
Why?
It doesn't always work because I bring my phone into the bedroom and I keep looking on the phone.
I wanted to say the phone as well.
Yeah, we forget the phone is very much
But
a
I
computer
tried.
as well. Yeah. Well,
The key point is you tried, right? The key point is you tried.
Yeah.
But there is a very interesting comment from one of our audiences, right? Anjali Doshi. She says, it's difficult to achieve work-life balance. We should perhaps look at work-life integration. And I think this words come out quite a lot, right? What do you guys think between work-life balance and work-life integration? What's your thought on that?
We should absolutely move towards that.
Yeah.
The integration should be built into your work scope even. Your workplace should care about, do you have enough time for yourself, for your family, for activities outside of work?
Well, and I think
Yeah.
that's important if you want to deliver, like depending, regardless of whether you're talking about being in an actual work situation or life, if you want to deliver at your best, you have to be able to take care of you. And it's something that for a long time I didn't understand. In the last 10 or 15 years, I've put that foremost in terms of understanding that if I want to be there to deliver, to deliver value when I'm speaking or traveling, okay, not traveling now, but to deliver for my clients, that I need to be healthy, that I need to get enough sleep. I need to make sure that I'm well hydrated. I need to, all these things I never worried about when I was young. Now all of a sudden, they have an impact, and it's good to know that, because too often we push ourselves past what we can do, and again, as I said earlier, there are times we have to do that, but not every time, not every time. And the biggest thing that I've learned to do, and even within the last 6 months with the pandemic, is to say no. That's the boundary part. To say, I understand what you're saying, and that it's important, but it doesn't fit for what I'm doing with my life, or it doesn't fit with my business model, or I'd love to help you, but to be honest, right now I am like totally booked. I actually teach that, to teach people to say, instead of saying yes, say, let me check my schedule and get back to you. And then you look at your schedule, and your schedule has nothing on it, and you write in there, time for me. And then you phone them back and say, I'm sorry, but I'm already scheduled for something. And they go, okay. And they go find another victim, because they're just looking for somebody to dump it on, or to get to do it. And the first person that's yes gets it. And your time for you is just as important as your family time and your work time. And if we don't get that, then we will be, people will take advantage of us until we get used up and they leave us on the side of the road. And that's too sad.
I mean, Stephen Covey, in his very, very well-known book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, I mean, number 7 is sharpen the saw. And nowadays, you will also hear a lot of people talk about the most important skill that you can learn is to say no. And I think we so often step into that. But there's also a reciprocal thing that when you pick up the phone or when you contact people, is to also say, do you have the time to talk to me now? Is it convenient? Because I so often find that, the phone would ring or the WhatsApps would come, but nobody would say, is it convenient for you? So I think that is something we can inculcate as well in the way that we interact with others. And you talk about relationships and work relationships, and I think that there's a mutual responsibility. Paloma, you said the environment should be ready and the environment should adapt, and it's never just one person's action. It is that collective sense of responsibility that we have towards one another that can make the difference.
Agreed. I mean, I'm going to jump in here to try and put this as a summary. I think environment is where we are coming at. You see, we can individually find boundaries. We can individually say no. Through that learning, we can be present. But we are not a world by ourselves. We operate within a system. And that system, i.e. the environment, becomes very critical. So if you, like the gentleman who sent the quote earlier, integration, if you're working in an environment where, forget about integration, you're basically, I buy you for 40 hours a week. End of story. Now, that I buy you 40 hours and the 40 hours become 60 and 70, right? So Paloma said it earlier. She's doing a hugely responsible job where she has a self-responsibility that if I'm not present, I'm feeling self-guilty. Nobody's blaming her. Nobody's pointing at her, but it's a self-inflicted, sorry, wrong word, harsh word. It's a self-responsibility that says, I must, do my best. And then the realization comes, hey, to do my best, my cup must be full, i.e. enter self-care, i.e. enter Bob's in the diary put in the time and call back and say no. So I'm going to just flip this a little bit. As I said, the COVID, I'm probably one of the oddballs in the world who loved COVID because I didn't have to go to my clients. Finally, everything happened on this rectangle black screen that we are talking on right now. I've been doing it for 2 years before that. And what happened was my calendar runs my life, not my wife. My Google diary runs my life. It starts at 7 a.m. in the morning and it clocks out at 10, and it has everything that my daily life, and I repeat that word, my daily life needs from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And it's including my breaks, my reference materials, research, my meetings. It's got everything chalked in according to certain time bands. It's the choice of selecting, do I take a 15-minute break? Do I take a 30-minute break? So what can I do in 30 minutes? What can I do in 50? It's intentional. And I come back to boundaries. I've set those. Working, I had that to some extent when I was in a salaried job. But at the end of the day, your breaks can get taken away when your boss says, Joy, jump, we need to meet now. And Joy breaks the high jump record because it's your boss. It's normal. You got to do it. The environment. But if you had a boss who said, hey, 5 p.m., no meetings, we are not talking, no email, stop. We're going to pick this up at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. It's not on fire. Even if it's on fire, it's not life and death. That environment starts a behavior where integration can be possible. It sends a clear message saying, I value your time with your family or yourself because I need you 100%. So I need you 100% X to Y time zone, and then Y to Z time, you're 100% there. Can we have that environment? I believe we can. There are organizations, there are units, if I may call it, who are doing it. Small, sporadic, it'll come. And I think one fallout or positivity of COVID has been, as a race and as humans, we've probably grown a little closer thanks to this gray box and the Zooms and all that we've had. There's a little bit more care, i.e. under the word of humanity, that's going around, that, at least in my personal opinion, than I've experienced 6 months ago, 7 months ago. I think we were a highly cynical bunch coming into 2020. Another year, ring in the new year, big goals, go for it, and then boom, the whole world comes to a standstill. Everybody's indoors. Within families, I've had two very dear friends, one in Malaysia, one in India, where the family actually refound themselves, if that makes sense. They found that they've got kids. They just, husband, wife, and kids actually found what they love by being like having something as simple as a Friday night pizza and a Netflix. The kids get to stay up till 10:30 p.m. in place of going to bed at 9, kind of stuff. I think that adds a lot of balance from the life perspective, because again, I go back to our first point. Probably it brings happiness, it brings joy, it brings some fulfillment, gives you a drive, you feel self-worth and self-valued, and you take that into what you do. So environment, oh yeah, definitely. And then environment has different cultural aspects, behavioral aspects, wherever we are. I mean, where Bob is, it works differently, different conditioning. Where we are, between Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, India, it works differently. So as we can impact the environment, us individually, in our own little pools, I think that'll happen. Whether it'll happen in our lifetimes or not, I'm not the data guy, but it'll definitely happen. We are closer as a human race.
That's a good point, Joy, because when you talk, I like what all of you are talking about. End of the day, we're coming back to intention, right? Being intentional with the time that you spend, whether it's at work, whether it's with your family. And I like the fact of scheduling the me time. When someone told me about it some time back, I was like, huh? Schedule me time? You mean you want me to put in the calendar and put my name and say, Cheryl Witha time? That doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? But later on, I actually realized the value of doing that. You're really valuing yourself, your time, your worth. And I think what Elmarie earlier said about, saying yes to everything, or people having no boundaries, in a sense, inviting you for everything at any time, and us as well in the beginning of COVID accepting everything. I remember going for every Zoom workshop, anything that was there, I was like signing up for it, until a point where I was sleeping at odd hours. And I think when COVID first occurred, it was like suddenly everything had no boundaries anymore. You felt like, oh, I'm working from home, so I have more time. It was a perception perhaps in the beginning. But when we go back to talking about the environment we work in, right? Some of us work in an environment where we can manage and decide that workflow, right? But what about, there was some comment earlier about the B40s, right? Those who are actually working maybe in the service line, or those who come from backgrounds where their work environments expect them to work maybe at all times. And WhatsApp people are messaging you all the time. What is your suggestion for people? How can they communicate that? I mean, how do you say no actually? How do you set those priorities when, like Joy said, right, we're talking about environment where there are times you work in a toxic environment. And in the Asian culture, for example, when you talk about workplace, right, like if you finish work at 5 o'clock and you log off at 5 o'clock, you go like, hey, I'm going back home. You're going back home? It's 5 o'clock. You're very early. You're going back home now? So we're talking about that kind of environment, right? So what is your advice? How do you communicate that priorities that you have when you're trying to, create that flexibility in your balance? I mean, what's your advice, guys? Hi, Jagathis. Nice to see you.
Hi,
So
Negi.
maybe we can have a Paloma.
Finally.
So Jagathis is just joining us. Jagathis is one of our panels. So lovely to have you here. So just to update you, we were just talking about environments, right? Toxic environments, and how do we communicate our priorities and what's important to us to try to start with that work-life integration, right? How can we communicate?
Okay, you go ahead first. Let me listen
Yeah,
to all
Paloma,
of
you
you
wanna?
for a short while. Warm up myself.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, so
Cheryl,
I'm
did you
Paloma.
mean at the office or at work?
Say for example
Work
now,
from home.
yeah, those who are working from home, for example,
Yeah,
I mean, there's still a lot of people working from home, right? So
yeah,
how do you balance it out when you're working for someone and someone is giving you these instructions and rules, and you're trying to have that me time, right? Joy talked about this,
right.
right? I've scheduled it, and then your boss says, hey, get on a call now. So how do you say no without, I mean, someone mentioned it earlier, right? Without losing your job. Or how do you manage that in a way that you still can communicate and have that flexibility? I think Bob talked a lot about flexibility, right? It's not like 50-50 balance. I mean,
Yeah,
life is not like that.
yeah,
So how do we kind of communicate without being too fussy, like five is five? But
right.
sometimes when you need to deliver, you need to deliver. What can we offer advice to our audience listening in?
First of all, there has to be psychological safety.
Good point.
You have to feel safe saying, I'm facing this challenge and I cannot join this call. Unfortunately, we don't have that in most workplaces. I've been here 15 years and that's my observation. So, how do we build psychological safety? You bring me into your organization and I'll teach you.
Spot on. I mean, I'm going to jump in, Paloma. I couldn't agree more with you. Psychological safety, and to use jargon, emotional intelligence from those who are leaders in a
Yes.
workplace. And I'm being very, very particular about workplace does not mean a corporation, a business, a company. I mean from our civic corporation services people who are toiling away from 7 in the morning till 5 in the evening, all the way up to the big multinational. Psychological safety is one of the most, I don't know, understated, not deployed, not discussed
Yes.
area in, forget about the corporate side, in any form of activity, commercial or not for profit, even in educational institutions. And I say this after 7 years plus in an educational institution. One. Two, I think men or women, gender aside, getting to understand your own self from an emotional perspective and understanding who you are helps you to have better self-leadership. When you have better self-leadership, you create an environment with your people of that safety and of understanding, where when somebody says, hey, we are all working from home, but boss, you know what? I can't jump onto this call at 3. I got ABC. Do you think you could make some time at 6 or 5? I'm happy to give it. Number 2. Number 3, and I've done this with a few of my clients during these past 6 months, actually sitting down and scheduling in the calendar on a weekly basis, just a 15-minute catch up with your teams, with your team people, one-on-one, rotating. So it's not every Monday at 12:15 in the afternoon. It's one day at X and one day at Y, but it's a mutual give and take where there's a clear understanding we are operating in a dual role system. And a lot of people I know don't even have an office like setup at home, out in our part of the world I'm talking about. My clients are in India and in Southeast Asia over here. People that they're working, they have 6 people in an apartment, in a condominium. They literally have to make a corner to sit down and talk. And it's the whole point comes, how do I tell my boss, I can't do this conversation after 2 p.m. because my kids are back from, online class and they're going to be running around. Simple as that. So when that environment creates that safety, when that environment brings that, I know I'm getting into jargon, but brings that empathy, brings that intelligence, self-intelligence, emotion in, you will find reciprocity from another person. That's our human nature. If you're kind, you get a smile back, kindness flows. If you're rude, you're cynical, automatically we respond the same way. So, agreed, what Paloma said. We want a balance.
Let's talk a little bit more about emotional intelligence.
I mean, if it's relevant on here, yeah, sure.
Yeah, if your boss is asking for a meeting at an unreasonable hour, if you have a spouse, if you have kids, you can kind of blame it on them. Or someone is sick and I need to take care of them. Of course, you might get into a bit of reputational issue about that. Oh, she's not committed, whatever. But here's one big question. What do you do when you don't have a spouse and you don't have kids and you live alone? What is your excuse? So we need that emotional intelligence from your work environment to recognize that even if you don't have elderly people to take care of, kids to take care of, a spouse to take care of, you're still deserving of your me time.
Absolutely.
I'm being the
And
voice
it's
of the
okay to
single
schedule. It's okay to schedule time for yourself and your own interests. And like I said earlier, you can say, I would love to respond to that, but I've already got something scheduled for that time period. And, could we make it here? I think very often we're afraid to say no with an excuse, but we're also afraid to say that doesn't work, but could we do this? Because you think about it, in the position of the person contacting you, sometimes they're just being idiots, and that's a whole different story. But most of the time they're not. They're under pressure. They need stuff done. They're looking at you because you've got skills and whatever. So if you can't do it at that time, if you take the proactive thing, you say, I can't do that, but I could talk to you at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, or I could talk to you a half an hour later, or, all they want to do is to be able to do things. I used to do work for a really big, retail furniture company here in Canada. And for about 5 years, I became the go-to guy for the president of the company. And I live about an hour away from where his office is. And at one time, his secretary said, Kim wants to talk to you. So I came in, and it was wintertime, and I'm walking into his office and starting to take off my parka because it's really cold here in the winter. And he said, don't take off your jacket. You're not staying that long. And I looked at him. He said, here's what I need. Can you do this? Yes. Okay. Thanks. Love you. And he went back to work. And just being responsive to his needs kept my mortgage paid for 5 years. but on a real
Yeah.
basis, it's a matter of valuing the other people and being honest about your situation. I think too often we're afraid to say, I really would love to help you, but I'm overwhelmed right now. I am just
Right.
like right on the edge of overwhelm because we're afraid it's going to make us look weak instead of being honest about who we are. And I think when we do that, then we push until we die or we break. And I don't think that does anybody a favor.
Yeah, it's I
Yeah.
totally agree, Bob. I mean,
Yes.
I think the point is, Paloma, you said if you're single, you're not looking. It's the other person's understanding or respect for your space and time. So you see, whoever is pushing you at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. knows that you are single. There's a decorum, decency in relationship that comes in, work wise or otherwise, to say, like Elmarie mentioned, people don't ask, they just send the message at whatever time. Can I call you? It's a forgotten habit or behavior, if I may say, sending a text to say, I'd love to have a chat with you. Could I know if X PM or Y PM or AM is okay with you? It's an old, sorry, it might sound a little sexist, it's an old boys chivalry culture, asking
Yeah.
anybody, whether it's another mate or it's a lady, especially when it's opposite sex, you always check. And
Yeah.
it's not just here. It's across Asia. I mean, I've lived and worked across Asia. I'm telling you, people just shoot off everything using technology at all points in time. Balance, there's no balance. Forget about those four rubber balls, Cheryl. They're all down. They're all bouncing and cracking. So if I'm going to ask you, Paloma, I've got to have the understanding, the respect that, hey, I need to text and find out. So if I send you a text and there's no reply, that's the end of the story. It stays there till tomorrow morning, work or whatever comes around when we are meeting. And I can bring it up then to say, hey, I sent you this. And you could say, look, I'm really sorry, but that was my sleep time. That was my whatever, I don't see my phone till 6 a.m. in the morning or 7 a.m. in the morning. Respect. That's it. Otherwise, and because we don't do this, because we jump, we say, if I leave office at 5, I'm going to be pulled down, I'm not going to get a promotion, not going to get my increment. It's a vicious cycle of the environment that has perpetuated this. So when I'm an executive and I've worked everything, I become a manager, I'm repeating the same thing because, hey, you know what? That's how I got to where being a manager is. So I'm going to make my executive slog. Have you ever thought that if you show a little bit of kindness and understanding, i.e., emotion,
Well,
chances are the strength.
this all comes down to, and I think emotional intelligence and investing in companies and people and in schools and in education and in raising that really has been scientifically proven to improve performance and relationships. And I think it's a consciousness, as Bob mentioned. I love the way, Bob, that you put your, offer an alternative. Don't get caught in this trap of learned helplessness and thinking you cannot make a difference, because you can model those behaviors to your boss. Don't always just wait for other people to do it for you or show it to you. If you then model those behaviors in your interactions with other people, maybe that would make them step back and say, well, hang on a minute, look at how this person constantly behaves, and maybe that rubs off. So you can make a difference. And I see from the comments that's coming in and from there's a lot of people talking about male female issues and gender issues, and do women feel more stressed than men, and I think it again brings us to this conference, right? We're looking at women empowerment, and we're saying, let's get out of this gender gap, and let's rethink about this. Why should we even ask the question, do women feel more stressed than men? Or that I think we should work in society towards really breaking down those boundaries. Educate your
Yeah,
son.
here, yes, yes, here again, like most of us are baby boomers. So our way of thinking, our way of commitment, dedication is totally different from the youngsters Gen Y these days. So therefore, like what Joy said, They don't ask for permission before they text, before they call. They don't do that. They're expecting us to be with the handphone 24/7, just like how they are all the while. You see, but when we baby boomers are holding the phone, but we are doing a lot of research, we read a lot of articles, we want to know many other things, and that makes you a better person, you see. And these days, we have to keep up with this digital era. In other words, whatever digital, how should I put it, digital era, we have to keep up with all this to compete with the Gen Y. Otherwise, we are falling back. Like I am retired, but I'm still learning quite a lot, and I should take this opportunity to thank Andrea. She has done a great job. From the past 5 to 6 months, I've been with her without fail. All her events, weekly events, I used to take part. And I did ask someone about working from home, what happens to their KPI. But over the time, I realized I'm also in the same situation where I cannot identify my own KPI. I'm working from home, but my boss would expect me to come online any time of the day. Take for instance, when you're having your meal, when you're showering, the call is coming. If you're not online, what happened? Where are you? That's how they attend to us. Because my boss is also a younger person. So I can understand what Paloma is trying to say. Paloma, that is quite common with many organizations. If they notice that you are a single woman, they will make use of your ability, in other words. So I think, like what Joy said, you put your foot down and bob. Is that Bob? Am I right? Yeah, they said you put your foot down and you say no. We must learn to say no at certain point of time. Yeah.
Yes.
It's imperative for our survival.
Yeah.
I'd like to expand a bit on the single life, which I normally enjoy. But during MCO, it comes with its own set of challenges that people don't realize. You cannot delegate anything. Everything has to be done on your own. And also, let me tell you a story. When you don't have a spouse or kids to remind you that it's mealtime, you lose track of time. And it turns out that I had not eaten for 2 days. It was great because I lost weight and I could fit in my nice dresses, but then there's nowhere to go in the nice dress. So
maybe you need an accountability partner to say,
I was getting
I'll phone
to
you
that.
at 6 o'clock to make sure you've eaten.
Yeah, I was getting to that. So now I have a friend that we check on each other. Have you eaten today? It's time to log off. Have you slept well? So check on your single friends. Don't forget about us. And also, since you cannot delegate anything, the grocery shopping, the repairs in the house, nothing, help each other with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my point.
Brilliant.
I think reaching out to each other is very important during this time, whether you're single, whether you're not, whether you have a spouse, whether you have a kid. That understanding that we need to support each other, and bringing back the conversation to talking about the younger generation. I teach Gen Y, Gen Z, the younger Gen Z, and the ones entering the workspace now, just entering, and the ones who are still in campus. So I don't know if you guys heard of this concept of the blue tick. So when you send WhatsApp, if you have read it, means blue tick.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
in case you've never heard of this before, my students will tell me, Miss, did you blue tick me? Like, you've read my message and you're not responding to me. And the concept of time, I get 2 a.m., 3 a.m., messages from my students. So I completely understand in the sense of that time, right? They don't have the notion. I remember when I was younger and I called my uncle after 9 p.m. That was it. I got a shelling of my life for calling him after 9 p.m. And I thought it was early. And he was like, "You're calling me at this hour? What is up with you?" So I think when Jagathis talks about how the younger generation view time as well, right? Their idea of time is very different. So until you sit there now and talk to them and say, it's not okay. Why, miss? But you have your phone with you. I said, yes, but I'm off working hours. I'm with my family. You know what's going to happen if you message me at 12 a.m.? Imagine a boy texts me at 12 a.m., some student, right? My husband's going to say, hey, who's that messaging you? Like Raja comes up on my screen. Who is Raja? I'm like, it's my student. You know what I mean? So sometimes they don't understand until you break it down for them. I'll tell them, hey, are you guys trying to get me divorced or something? I would say absurd stuff like that just to get them to think. And they're like, I never thought about it that way. Sometimes they don't have ill intentions, but it doesn't occur in their mind at all. So sometimes it's important for us to tell them. And when you tell them, they'll be like, I
So
never
it comes,
thought about it that way.
Cheryl, you hit it on the head.
And it's
Sorry.
enabling. Sorry, yeah, it's enabling behavior, right? Because you are the moment you respond to those texts, you are enabling them, and you are giving them power over your life. So that's
That part,
the unfortunate
the
reality.
communication, Cheryl, you highlighted. So coming back to what Jagathis was saying, that the younger generation pushes and calls at odd hours. Yeah, their perspective of time is very different. But if you have communication, that's very important. And the communication is, I've got experience, you've got all the tech skills. But hey, I tell you what, let's combine it between sun hours, I mean, like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. kind of a thing. But after that, guess what? My very bones, they really need a little bit of a rest. So I'm going to knock off at 7. You go party out. I'll catch you at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Number one. And I say this from a real life example of currently running intergenerational with a client of mine, where exactly what Jagathis is saying, the senior management team is the baby boomer age group, okay? And the mid managers functioning are way younger than even Paloma and everybody, and well, older than your students. But this is what was happening. These guys were communicating in COVID at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night. The guys who were getting questions asked to say, boss, we need this done, can we proceed or not, were actually seeing it at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. the next morning and responding at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. But the sender was then seeing it at 9 a.m. in the morning because work starts at 9. They jump out of bed at 8:30, slap on a shirt, get onto Zoom. Shower is happening later, So it just came down to a communication, sat down, again, back to Bob, no boundary calendar, and say, okay, why we are doing this? Because this is the first time we are working remote. Let's try it out for a week. And I can tell you, we started that in March. It's continuing even now when they've started getting back on a roster, number one. Number two, single. Out here, I find it missing, but back in Bombay, I've got 3 examples of exactly what Paloma suggested. People checking on people, but these 3 people are single who work in the same organization. They work in the same organization in different units, who checked and are checking and are helping each other eat, sleep, drink, have a normal routine going so that they're responsible to each other or accountable to each other. And it works. It works. And one of them is 40 plus, I mean, he's 46, not going to get married. The other 2 are much younger, and they're great mates. They're great buddies. They're enjoying that time. They're enjoying looking after each other, so to speak. So that's part of balance. You help each other, you communicate it, and life then gets balanced.
Yeah. Work-life balance and harmony has no standard measured instrument. That's another word I used to use. There's no measured instrument for work-life balance. Besides that, Joe, I'm very sure you know about the abuse rates during the MCO period.
Yes.
Yeah, we all know
Yeah.
about it. And that is also due to many youngsters' issues, not the older generation. Just like to highlight that as well. And I think the MCO has affected the younger generation than the baby boomers. It's more for them. If they could educate and discipline, then I think life will be much easier for them if they can adapt to this kind of crisis. This crisis can come anytime. It's not planned. So they have to prepare themselves for this kind of disasters. In other words,
Agreed. That is agreed. But I would speak up for my younger buddies and my younger generation with two things. One is we've arrived at a point with years and years of crisis management. That's why we are baby boomers or Gen X.
yes,
These guys are
yeah,
facing
very,
their first crisis. Some of them are just facing their first crisis in life, which is, a real horrendous crisis. None of us in our lifetime have faced this. We're adapting. It's just that we have the experience of managing certain fires, so we are a little better equipped. These young guys are learning on the job, so to speak. There is no manual on managing life during a pandemic with various rules. I mean, look, I used to travel on work, as Bob was mentioning, and I've lost business. Forget about that. But actually, the thrill of traveling to another place, to meeting a few other people, I'm of that generation where I love to hug people. I love to handshake people. I like to reach out. Exactly. Today, Bob and I next to each other talking on this panel, chances are we'd be high-fiving on the side like here every 30 seconds, literally. Oh, okay, sorry, social distance. So I got to walk up 3 feet to you. But that apart, they are adapting. And I think each generation of our humanity has a major amount of plus. We're not digital natives. In my lifetime, I've gone from an electronic typewriter to Slack and Microsoft Teams. I've trained myself. But these guys are coming out, growing up. Their hands and everything, their world is virtual. Tomorrow we'll have a generation that lives on augmented and virtual reality. Machine learning will be Microsoft Word for them. AI would be our MS Office, for example. So we also should adapt to learn. It's again goes back to, if we want balance, let's talk, let's communicate, let's give in order to get. And I'm sure that that's how I do it with teams in the marketing side. The reciprocity that flows when you give and take, and then you figure out where's the tension, where's the drop, how is it going to happen. A balance can be done. The two things that are required is patience and consistency. We want work-life balance. We cannot have it our way, the way we view it, because in this panel itself, there are 6 of us with 6 different perspectives. The first thing is, can we respect every perspective, because every perspective is right? It's looking at that same core work-life balance from 6 different points of the compass. We agree to that. That means, hey, can I try Bob's way? Let me start saying no. Can I try Paloma's way? Can I call her to find out, have you eaten? Do you have food? Do you need somebody to deliver you something? Can I talk to Cheryl and say, do you think you could help me develop this course? We're all online. So when you start working that way, you start opportunities, collaborative opportunities. The competitiveness reduces. And the competitiveness is what, at least I can only speak from a work perspective, as in a corporate business work perspective. We've been born and brought up and raised over the last 80 to 90 years where one man's income is another man's expense. Adam Smith's economic theory. That breeds competitiveness. Competitiveness breeds, I'm going to stomp on you and I'm going to go forward. End of story. So back to balance. We want to do it. Let's communicate. Let's reciprocate. Let's reach out and say, respect me, because this is my timings. I will respond to you and we will do this together. But do you think we could keep it to X and Y? You got 2 scenarios that's going to play out. I don't understand. You mean you don't see your phone at 10 p.m.? No, actually, I take 1 hour to detox. My phone's in my work table. My bedroom does not have my work. So how do I reach you in an emergency? Oh, try calling the good old-fashioned landline. You know, the old dial telephone we used to use. You got to punch a few buttons. Oh, okay. But I send voice notes. You're most welcome. I wake up at 5. I'll give you a response at 5:45. I'm sorry I'm laying this out a bit too simplistically, but what happens is people start realizing there's some value. Okay, Joy, you can still kick my bleep. That was an auto delete sound
We
because we are
can
live.
set the rules for them. We can always
No,
set the rules.
we
for
set
them.
the rules mutually.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah. And then
I think negotiation is key here, like what Joy said, right? We negotiate and we say, okay, understand these are my boundaries. And, let's start tomorrow morning, let's talk from this time to this time. And you can always ask me any questions. If not, drop me an email. I'll speak to you about this. Like for me, what I do is when students want to ask me questions about assignments, I don't respond to WhatsApp. I say, email me, and I'll get back to you at an appropriate time, working hours sort of thing. And I think negotiation is very important, whether it's talking about when you can text me or WhatsApp me, but also we talked earlier about fear, right? Like communication, like Joy said, are we really communicating with our bosses? Our bosses are also human beings, right? They also have their own lives. They're not like an alien, right? They too maybe have spouse. Maybe some of them are single. Maybe some of them have kids. If we can speak to them, sometimes it's also fear, right? I'm afraid what will my boss think? So I don't dare. But until we try, we won't know, right? Let's try to approach them and say, hey, boss, this is happening. Is it all right if I step out? Or can I settle this, And people are most often than not understanding, but sometimes we need to try. You never know if you don't try to negotiate and speak up. Sometimes your boss is, we see bosses as like, oh my God, she's my boss, he's my boss, like untouchable. You can't speak to them, they're not the people you go for lunch with, they're not the people you just simply, there's so much of formalities. But I think during COVID time, a lot of bosses actually, you saw a different side of them. If you nudge them a little,
you saw the human. You saw
Yes.
the human.
Yeah.
You saw the human.
They are human,
Yeah.
and this is bringing it out. But again, what you're saying is small steps. Maybe you can't make big changes
Yes.
in your work relationship, but you can make small changes. And if you don't try, you don't get. The one thing I tell people, I've told for years,
Bob.
is people are
Yeah,
usually more willing to say yes than I am to ask for help.
Yeah.
You have
And I
to
think
ask.
it
That's a beautiful
doesn't it-
one, Bob.
Doesn't it all boil down to you really learning to or thinking about what is really important to you, and what are you willing to sacrifice? What do you give? How much do you give? And if you don't know what you want in life, what you want to achieve, what you're working towards, what your values are, then other people are given power over you. So I think that is, to me, that if you want to talk about work-life balance, that is the bottom line. If you have to have emotional intelligence, you have to be secure in yourself, you have to know what your values are, you have to know what you want to achieve, and set those goals. And it's not about what you want in life, it's who you want to become in life and what are you growing towards. If we can get that established in people, then I think work-life balance will just fall in place, because we will make those responsible decisions about how we interact with others, how we talk to them, what we can ask them, and we won't become victims of calendars and clocks and time. So that's what I think we should instill in our young people.
We need to know the purpose and the passion. Then they will work towards it.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
absolutely.
yes.
All right, let me tell you what my female friend told me recently when I checked in on her. She had finished her shift, so I thought, let's text and see what's going on. And she said, now I'm starting my second shift. I was like, what do you mean? You're freelancing? She's like, no, the second shift is Jaga baby, the little baby, the newborn, and Jaga the big baby. And the big baby being the husband.
Yeah.
And I was horrified. And then she said, sometimes he'll babysit and sometimes he will help, but most of the time it's my job.
Oh,
And
that makes me livid.
I said words that I cannot
I don't want to
say.
go there.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I responded saying, first of all, it's not babysitting when you are the parent.
Absolutely.
It's not helping when you also live there. It's just doing your part. And it doesn't take away anything from your masculinity if you just do the dishes. And like ILO says, if we keep going this way, it will take 210 years for us to get rid of that second shift. So, gentlemen, please do your part.
Paloma, thank you for saying
Yeah.
Thank you for
man in
reminding
the house
us.
doing dishes. I'm proud to say this and on live. I do the dishes every blooming day. And I'll tell you why. Thank you for bringing it
Yeah.
out, because that's the key. You're not babysitting, you're not helping. You're doing the share that you
You're
and
doing your
your
part.
wife, your partner, whatever, agree to do, because each one of us has a role in the house. Remember at the
Yes.
start, I said, I love sending my boys to school. My wife she drives. She can take them to school. I can get that 30 minutes, 45 minutes extra. But it's my time with my boys. There's a difference there. It's not a chore. It's not a job. It's
Yeah.
it's a relation.
Sharing responsibilities.
Sharing responsibilities. Thank you for bringing it up. It's so very important. And
You
Elmarie,
did
if I could,
say though, I wash the dishes every blooming day. So
every blooming day, yeah. Sorry, the blooming here is used as fun.
just
It
joking.
doesn't mean thing, yeah.
The thing
But I
that
wanted to
drove
say
me
that
crazy was when my son would say to me, not my youngest, but my eldest son had this thing of, I wash the dishes for you, mom, and he very quickly learned that that's the wrong thing to say, because it's like,
You did
why-
not do me a
why
favor.
wash the
You're
dishes?
part of this household, right?
So we
My
quickly
eldest-
sorted that out.
yeah, my eldest has that running at the moment to say that, hey, mom, today is my turn. I'm doing it, but so what's the reward in turn? I said, what reward? Just make sure you keep doing this, because you're gonna fill in my shoes. I'm not gonna keep washing this. Very few years later, my ankles and all are gonna go. So you get prepared for it, but you
But
flip it over. And
but
yeah,
Joy, I'm
Yeah.
not
Again,
sure
that's where it
if you will
starts.
agree with me. Sorry, Bob.
That's okay.
Bob?
Carry on.
Okay. No, I'm not too sure if Joy will agree with me. With Malaysian men, sorry to say this, they are not like the guys abroad. The Westerners are different. They share all
Stop.
the work. Ah,
Stop.
yes.
Men all over the world,
Joy, let
irrespective
her
of how we
speak.
look. No, I just
Let me
needed to get this
finish.
out. All men are men, and all women are women. You see, we say this. I've lived in India, I've lived in Pakistan, I've lived in Colombo, I'm living in Malaysia, I'm from UK, I'm a British national. Please, men everywhere are conditioned differently because every society brings their conditioning.
Yeah,
It's
Joy,
up to
you
us.
didn't let. No, you did not let me finish. I say
My
it's the
apologies. Go ahead.
culture. Yeah, it is also the culture that comes into picture. So it's more
Yes.
to the culture, yeah. That is
Yes,
what
but
I
we will
wanted to say.
digress
It's the
into a.
But
culture.
but but we can change the culture, and that
Thank you, Bob.
starts at home
Yeah,
with
Does.
the
it's also
mother.
yeah the
If it's only
upbringing
just
in
the
the
mother
family.
doing that, teaching the son to be a man in terms of being part of the household and doing things, that's where it starts. It starts one person teaching one person teaching one person. You know, I think too often we use culture as an excuse, and I'm not downplaying what you're saying, because we've changed things over the years that used to be culturally. The fact that we're doing some things now, like even this is a different culture we're living in. We're now living
Correct.
Yes,
we're living in the C generation, the COVID generation, which is impacting our culture and the way we communicate and the way we work with each other and the way we help each other. It's forcing us to do things, but some
yes,
really good things are coming out of it that I think we can choose to do that. The same thing in terms of like just like you're doing in terms of training your boss.
Hmm.
You can train your husband. If you don't believe me, just ask my wife.
You can ask mine also. Jagathis, she's nearby to you. You can happy to give her the number. But I agree with Bob. I mean, I think I think we have come closer after this COVID experience, and it starts with us. See, if we say Malaysian men or Indian men or whatever men from wherever they are, what we do at our home goes out through our children 30 years later, right?
Very true.
So if as a father and as a mother, if we are intentional in the action and our behavior that we want our children to see, and my wife and I, we do quarrel, we do have fights, but you know the beauty of it is when we want to quarrel, we're really pissed, we shut down, we make sure the kids are gone to bed, and then we clean our laundry in another bedroom between ourselves. We agree to disagree and kiss to fight and leave it there. The reason for this is very simple. I want my boys to respect women. So I to ask my wife, help me for us not to have disagreements, violent disagreements in front. And my wife and I are chalk and cheese, absolute chalk and cheese. So we agreed not to have violent disagreements. And believe you me, we have really, really big disagreements. But it's us. If we do it, I strongly believe it can be done. I've seen families around the country who are doing their little bit in their little circle. If you have these mini pools all over, and that's one of the reasons why probably all of us are on this panel, we're doing our bit. 20 years from now, who knows? Things will be much better in this way that we look at it.
I want to bounce off something Bob said. He said, train your husband. And The Guardian recently published a story about this. And it's an issue because it's a mental load on women. And I've seen it among my friends. It's mentally exhausting to teach them how to do things and to keep reminding them to do things. And the men always saying things like, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it. But the fact that you have to think about telling them to do something is mentally exhausting. So think about that too, gentlemen.
I think, guys,
we have to keep in mind that men and women, our brains work differently, right? So, men think more localized areas in their brains. Women think all over. We can multitask more. Our corpus callosum is thicker. We can send these messages across and think of 20 things at the same time. And men tend to think more in a more localized way. So we've got to consider this, right? Women have 7,000 words a day, and men have 700 words a day. I mean, we think spatially, we look different, we have differences, and we have to admit that. But training your husband, I don't think it's about training. I think it's about being very clear on expectations. And I think before you get married, you must ask like 1,000 questions and be sure that you sort it out. Because you can't change.
Trust me, the guys out here is going to run away. Trust me, Elmarie, the guys out here will ask at the 10th question, they're going to say, bye, it was nice knowing you. Because the vocabulary is,
it was nice knowing you as well.
Vocabulary is, hello, how do you do? Do we go for the movie or do we go for the dinner or whatever it is? It ends up. I'm just kidding. But
so guys, this is an extremely interesting discussion. I think if we were given time, we'll probably spend a couple of hours just hashing these things out. But we're on our last 5 minutes, so I'm just going to start wrapping it up, right? So some important points, I think, that was brought up by Elmarie, right? I think at the end of the day, it depends on who you want to become, who you are right now. What is important to you? Those priorities, I think, are very crucial when we're talking about work-life balance or when we're talking about relationship management, right? We see words like train your husband coming in, as well as, what about culture and things like that. But when we are going on a road, right, especially when it comes to marriage, right, again, there's no manual. When you're having kids, there's no manual telling you this is the exact way to do things. It's not like men against women or Gen Y against Gen Z, Gen Y against baby boomers. We all have to understand, going back to what Joy said, right? We are all different and we have strengths and we have weaknesses. How do we now work together with each other to collectively find that balance, right? So if I need you, same thing like your boss needs you a little more this time, right? So maybe I do a little bit more for my husband now and then later you do a little bit more. But I understand that culturally, Some of them, the way they think has always been like that, and that those are small steps. And it goes back to what some of you have mentioned as well, right? So we take these little micro steps slowly, and hopefully when it comes to us, those of us who are having kids right now, I have a 3-year-old, right? You teach them as well, you and your husband, teach them what is the role of both of them. It's not about female or male, right? End of the day, I
It's
think what's
very
very
true.
important is we are in this together.
Absolutely.
Female, single, married,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter where you want to put yourself into that box, right? Because back again, right, it's all about flexibility. If you go back to what Bob said earlier, right? Flexibility, accountability. We've discussed all these notions. At the end of the day, we need to learn to grow together. How are we going to do that? That's what we need to find out right now. And that's what we need to work towards. And I think if we can do that, right, we would have better balance or better integration. And like Paloma says, we won't have to wait 200 over years to get there. But we all have to help each other, right? Baby boomers,
Yeah,
Gen Z, Gen
but-
Y, females, males, wherever
Yeah,
we can.
It has to start from the home, and
Yeah.
also
So
the
all of us-
parents, how they educate the children.
Yes.
It has
So
to
all
start
of us
from the
are doing
home.
our part here today, So go back, those audiences out there who has been amazing audiences for the last 1 hour and a half, right? Thank you so much for all your comments, all your questions. And I hope that this was a great learning experience for all of us as well. We learned from the audiences. We learned from our fellow panelists. We all from different backgrounds, different generations. Some of us are now having kids. Some of us are single. Some of us have had grown-up kids. We all can learn from each other,
Absolutely.
And this is
You
also an
understand that.
international group.
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely. So, guys, thank you so much for being an amazing panel. Thanks to the audience for, participating with us. We are so happy, all of us, to be part of this Global Women Empowerment Summit. A shout out to Andrea, of course, amazing feat, right? What you've done. And please check us out on all the other sessions coming up. You have Joy coming up, Bob, Elmarie, Paloma, Jagathis, all in different types of panels. We have secret rooms as well. You just need to get registered. This is the time, right? You got to start talking about it if you want change. So let's start
Exactly.
talking about it. Let's start little by little. We can't make changes like that, but we can start. So we are in this together, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you so
hope
much.
this has
Thank you,
been
Cheryl.
Thank you very much.
Great job, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When
It's
we
lovely to
communicate,
work
we can
with you.
cooperate, and then we
Good
can make a
night, bye.
change.
Yes, absolutely, Bob.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so much.
everybody.
And
Thank
check
you.
on your friends.
check on your friends. Yes, be
yep.
accountable to each other.
Yeah.
Great meeting everybody today.
Yeah, it was great.
Lovely.
It began with a bold vision to build KL Metropolis, a development that would establish a new international trade and exhibition district in Malaysia, built in partnership with the government by NASA Group's property arm, NASA TTDI. The crown jewel of this grand vision is the Malaysia International Trade and Exhibition Centre, the preferred international destination for exhibitions and events. Like the fine gold and silver threads of the Songket weave that inspired its facade design, MyTech is the embodiment of refined craftsmanship, creativity and precision. As Malaysia's largest exhibition centre, MyTech's functional spaces are unprecedented. Primed for exceptional displays, surrounded by state-of-the-art facilities and amenities. This iconic structure affirms a commitment to innovative excellence. It is a showpiece of engineering ingenuity. an enduring icon built for a new Malaysian era of success.